I'll go ahead and start off too.
Okay, cool.
Everybody ready? Okay. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys being flexible with the schedule. So to start off, I mean, what a fun season. A lot of cool relationships and memories. Still stings that we're not really playing and preparing to host an NFC championship. But like I said, when I talked to you guys after the game, there's a lot of gratitude. As far as any players' futures and anything into next year, not going to talk about that just because we haven't had those conversations yet. I'll get with our leadership group and ownership group and coaching staff, and we'll discuss what are the best decisions as it relates to how we want to move forward for our players. And then also, I know that it has come to my attention that there were some things out there about Matthew's ribs. As far as that's concerned, the way that occurred, when you look at it after the 49ers game, he had banged up his ribs. We took a picture of it. Nothing showed up on that imaging. It continued to kind of just irritate him, but it didn't affect his ability to practice anything, play related. But he did have some irritation. And then before the Minnesota game, when he did get an MRI scan, there showed some stress reactions. That was what was communicated to me, but it didn't limit his ability to practice. He's as tough as it gets. It's like anything else. As the season goes on, players accumulate things that they work through when you play as many games as they do, but did want to make sure that I addressed that for you guys as well. And I'll take any of your questions moving forward.
Start with you, Adam.
Yeah, Sean, we know Braden hurt his knee in that last game. Is that going to be something that requires any kind of procedure to clean up?
It'll be something minor. Fortunately, it's not a huge deal. I spoke with Braden yesterday. He's excited and optimistic. It'll be a little minor procedure that he'll have, but he'll be ready to go, and it won't affect his ability to be ready for next year. And excited about his future.
Are there any other off-season surgeries for the roster?
I haven't gotten with Reggie in regards to, the totality of it. There might be some minor cleanup things, but nothing of the, the immediate, nothing immediately in regards to like, okay, hey, we got hurt. We got to get this fixed. Braden is the one. And then, there might be some guys that get some cleanup things that are more precautionary and just preventative maintenance moving forward. But that's, Fiske is really the only one to my knowledge.
In the last 2 years, the roster has moved in a younger direction while you still have those veterans like Matthew, Cooper, Tyler, Rob. What has it been like just navigating what those two groups in very different stages of their careers need out of you as a coach?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. What I think is cool is you have guys that really set the culture. I think when it comes from the players and the guys in terms of the way that they model the way, it creates a clear understanding of what it looks like. And then when you get the right kinds of guys, then they can mimic and emulate that in their own way that's authentic to their personality. So those guys have been instrumental. They sure have meant a lot to me over the course of 8 years, or a handful of years with guys like Matthew. And so I think it's really beneficial. What I do think has been really good about the youth of our football team is it's enabled us to practice. You're able to do some things from a physical standpoint that maybe you're not able to do when you have the wear and tear on certain guys' bodies. And I think that was reflected in why some of the improvement was illustrated on the film and really throughout the course of the season, because guys were able to continuously work. That's the challenging thing about the NFL is as you go through a season, how do you really give yourself a chance to continuously improve outside of the competitive opportunities that you have with 17 games guaranteed? And when you can practice the way that we did, and I think this team practiced as well as any group I've been around, especially towards the latter part of the year with their energy and their approach. And I think that was reflected in why the improvement was what it was.
On Monday, Cooper talked about just some of the frustrations from this season, just not getting to be as productive as he's accustomed to for a variety of reasons, whether it's just kind of freak happenstance on the field or his injury. Like, how do you evaluate his 2024?
I think what he said was accurate. I think, all you can do from a receiver perspective, am I separating? Am I doing the things that I'm asked on every single play? And I think he can be proud of that. So I was really pleased and proud of the way that he led, the way that he handled himself. Certainly when you're a guy of his caliber that's made the kind of impact from just a statistical perspective, I thought I thought it was an outstanding illustration of his leadership. But I think there was some frustrating things overall, just from some of the inconsistencies throughout the course of the year, especially from an offensive perspective, that we'll need to address. And and that'll be something that we'll really be intentional about this offseason. But I was proud of Cooper. I thought he did a nice job.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Gary?
Hey, Sean.
Hey.
You mentioned that you weren't going to talk about players' futures, and I get that with guys who are going to be free agents and you guys have to decide. But unless Matthew decided to retire, can you say definitively that he's going to be playing for the Rams next year?
Yeah, we'll talk about all those things, Gary, at the appropriate time. I know he's playing really good football. Obviously, I love him, love working with him. What he's meant to our football team has been immeasurable in a positive way. So what we'll do is we'll continue to look at, the quarterback is always the first thing in mind as it relates to how you move forward with the team. I think he's playing really good football. And like I said, when we get back, we'll talk about all those types of things, but I'm sure proud of the body of work, really proud of the way that he's played. And I think the coolest thing you can say about Matthew, Gary, is he shines the brightest on the biggest stages. And when you look at the 7 playoff games that he's played in since he's been a Ram, he certainly gives you a chance every time you step out on the field. And, for that, I'm sure appreciative.
In regard to Cooper, if he does not decide to retire, can you say definitively that he's going to be playing for the Rams?
Yeah, you're a beauty, Gary. I love you, man. It's the same thing. Here's what I'll tell you. I think Gary, from our time together, how much those guys have meant to me personally, professionally, what they mean to our football team. Like anything else, let's let the emotions of the season die down. Let's really sit down with ownership, with the rest of the leadership group, with our coaching staff, and let's really evaluate, all right, what's the best thing for the Rams football team moving into 2025? But I'm sure grateful and appreciative of those guys and what they've meant to me, both personally and professionally.
Would extending Kyren Williams possibly before the season, is that something that would be among your discussions?
I think those will be, yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that definitely would be of a discussion. All those things. And like you mentioned, when you look at it and you got an evaluation of your roster and it starts with those free agents or those guys that, based on their contract status, what does that look like for you moving forward? You sit down, you say, all right, let's put this puzzle together. And it is an imperfect thing, but we try our best to make the best decisions for the football team. I'm really proud of the body of work that Kyren has put together, what he represents, all the different things that we really want to be about as a football team. And he's checking a lot of those boxes, Gary. And I think that's certainly something that will be discussed as well.
And finally, from me, can you let us know, can you shed light on any of your assistants that have interviewed or will be interviewing for jobs that you're aware of?
Sure. Yeah. So, unless guys get better opportunities, we'll have the same staff next year. I don't know what to do with myself. The fact that we're not having to worry about losing guys to head coaching jobs this offseason. I'm like, I feel a little weird right now, Gary. So, but we've got some really special coaches. You guys, I'm sure you guys saw, Aubrey got requested to interview for the Bears DC job. He's done an incredible job. Couple guys like AC Carter might have an opportunity to elevate himself. John Stryker broke my heart and went back with Vrabel. We kind of knew that. What a great job he did with us. He's going to have an opportunity to have an incredibly significant and cool role with the Patriots. And so grateful for the year that we had with him. But other than those two guys, don't really, I think there will possibly be some things, especially as some of these head coaches are starting to get hired. There'll be some names out there, but as it relates to, keeping the continuity of our coordinators, that looks like that'll be intact. And I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sarah?
Sean, when you're talking about, it feels kind of weird about keeping those guys and keeping the staff intact, not only not having to spend the next couple weeks thinking about who you might replace those guys with, but just the continuity. What does that mean from not just during the season, but like the start of OTAs and the planning process? What does it mean having the guys already in the building?
Oh man, it's huge. And I think one of the things that's been cool is you don't take for granted. I do get excited about the opportunity to onboard people and learn and pick their brains, but being able to have that continuity with some of the leadership that we have in place, especially with some of the ways that we approach the latter part of the season where, those guys have been given a bunch of autonomy and they've truly taken advantage of it and it's been earned. And so when you have Mike and Chris and what Chase has done over the last couple of years, that's a really good thing. And a lot of the continuity with the position coaches where you can start to build on things. And, as you reflect back on the season, there's a lot of things that I'm excited about diving into that we can try to do a better job collectively of making sure that we want to try to avoid some of the adversity. I'm sure damn proud of the way that we've been able to overcome it. But you'd like to avoid some of the things, if at all possible. We're excited about diving into the tactical part of it, to the schematic part of it, but it's huge, Sarah. And, this is a really special coaching staff that we had this past year. I think a lot of the cool things that this journey brought us on this past year is an incredibly cool reflection of the leadership of that coaching staff. And I was proud to be a part of it.
You guys have had two really strong draft classes the last 2 years. When you think about not that yet, but about starting to pay those guys, if you want to keep them with your team, what is the mindset going into free agency or an off season where you're not quite there, but you're maybe trying to save money for when you do have to pay some of the draft picks?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. I think what we know is each year is its own separate entity. You do want to be able to get ahead of those things. And I think in an ideal situation and scenario, you're building and developing from within with those draft picks. That doesn't mean that there's not some really great examples of guys that come in from other places that have made tremendous impacts. But I think that's an ideal situation. I think the youth of our football team, like I talked about, has been awesome in regards to some of the ways that we're able to approach just the season and the journey of the season from just a sports performance perspective. But those are positive problems for us to be able to navigate through if we're talking about we've got guys that we've been able to draft and develop, and even a lot of these guys that we've signed as undrafted free agents, especially this past year, that have made tremendous impacts. Really proud of those guys. And we want to continue to be able to stack blocks, and hopefully this year's draft class and undrafted free agent class will represent that as well.
And now you guys are a couple days away from the end of the season, maybe with less emotions as you were feeling right after the game. What is your, I guess, lasting memory or way you think about this team?
I think you guys hear me say the word gratitude, but just appreciation. The journey was hard, but it was worth it. There was a lot of fulfillment. And when you look back and you think about the things that calloused us in a good way, that was why it hurt, because I was talking with a couple of our coaches last night, and you appreciate how hard it is to be in those positions, and you don't take for granted how difficult it is. We've got some of these guys that have been on the team for 2 years, or even just these rookies, and all they know is getting to the playoffs and playing well down the latter stretch of the season and overcoming some early adversity. And I think that's a really cool thing, but you want to make sure that's never taken for granted. And to be in a position where you're in the final 8 and you're driving down the field with a chance to go up 1 under a minute in the game, in a hostile environment with a team that's played really well throughout the season, and you got everything at your fingertips, and to come up short is a cool reflection of the team to be in that position. But it's also really hard because it just seemed like a lot of things were going to maybe line up for us to be able to host an NFC championship, and everything that this team has gone through, everything that our city's gone through, that's a lot bigger than football. It just seemed like things were going to line up in kind of a fairy tale type of way. And I think the hard part about it is the finality of, nope, it didn't go down that way. But appreciation and gratitude and really the relationships that were built in the midst of that journey. That's what I'll always remember about this group. And it was as fun of a season as I've been a part of, especially the latter part. And it was as challenging in the early parts as any I've been a part of as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jordan.
Hey, Sean.
Hey.
Just wanted to check really quick. Nick Caley's been connected as a potential candidate to the Jets job. Have
Yep.
you talked to him about that? Do you know any updates on that?
I have. I've spoken to him about it. I know that's a possibility. Haven't gotten anything as it relates to a request, but yeah, I did speak with Nick yesterday. It was his birthday and his daughter Caroline's birthday yesterday, and so He was on his way to taking Chick-fil-A to her at school, and we were talking about that. And he's a special coach. He's done a great job for us. I love everything this guy's about, Jordan. I think it's really cool when these guys are offered opportunities to be able to elevate themselves, and you want to make sure that you evaluate all options as what that looks like. And so that is something that's a possibility, but there hasn't been anything official as it relates to a request.
Got it. And then, in terms of the timing for all of these decisions that you guys have to make, with Matthew, we knew as early as the first night of the draft that the contract situation was going to unfold. I'm sure you remember that fondly.
Oh yeah, it was a real fun night to take away from a good night.
And just into training camp, it just carried all the way into like the very first day of report day, 3 hours after report time for training camp. I wonder, like, what's the timeline that you guys want to get this figured out?
Yeah, we don't want to have that go on again. That's not so. I don't think that's good for anybody. I think sooner than later, being able to get that clarity, understanding, clear, open, and honest communication. I think there's a lot of a love coming from our part. I think there's a lot of appreciation coming from his part as well. And I think a lot sooner than later, Jordan, is an ideal scenario. And I think the appropriate thing is let's let the emotions settle. Matthew and I have obviously talked. He knows how important he is to me and to our football team. I thought it was a great dialogue. And then I think the appropriate timeline for us is, we'll get a chance at the end of next week to really sit down. That'll be one of the first topics kind of on your to-do list to be able to talk about. And then hopefully that'll give us the opportunity to be able to, move towards, clarity in regards to how that affects his status and what we're doing, with what we know is an incredibly important position for our football team moving forward.
And then with Cooper, I mean, to have a player, you came in with Cooper, right? And so to have a player like such as himself now be vocally unsure of what his future with the team is, what is that like, I guess, from the other perspective to understand that's how he feels about the situation?
I think how he feels is honest, about the situation. I think he's been very clear and upfront, and I respect that. What's unique, Jordan, is as you go through 8 years of this, right? There are certain people that you come across that, Cooper has changed my life for the better. He's made an impact on me, most importantly as a person. But what he's done as a player is incredibly amazing in regards to the production, but also just it's been so important in terms of a lot of the things that we've been able to build, with what he represents as a captain, the production. And so these things are very real. And, you try to say, oh, it's business, it's personal. Well, it all blends together because this is still relationships. And so I think he's honest about the situation. And I think those are the things that make it challenging. But one of the things that I've learned from him as much as anybody is there's no good way to go about hard conversations other than just straight to the point. And if you really love somebody enough, then you're able to be honest and direct with them. And he's always done that to me. That's what I've done with him, and we'll be able to, figure out what is the best way to navigate that moving forward. And like he said to you guys, he's got good football left. He wants to play for a handful more years. He's got good football. I thought he did a good job with the things that he could control. And, and for that, I'm really proud of him.
If you don't mind, then Rob Havenstein, in speaking with him on clean out day, he was emotional. He really wanted to take the time to process what the year was and kind of listen to what his body was telling him too. Have you talked to him about his future with the team?
Yeah, I talked to him quickly on Monday or whatever day that was. It all kind of blends together. But yeah, I'll get a chance to speak with Rob. I thought Rob should be so proud of himself with what he did this past year. I know he missed a couple games, but the difference between when he was in the lineup and when he wasn't, the impact that he had with the way that it's been really fun to watch him evolve into the leader and the man that he is, and how he positively impacts and influences change in a good way. He loves football. I thought he played really productive as well this year. I thought there was an edge, there was a toughness, there was a production reflected in both protection and the run game. I thought when he was in the lineup, I thought it wasn't by coincidence that Kevin Dotson played his best games as well. And so I'm damn proud of Rob and what he's done. And we will talk, and we'll see where he's at, what he's looking at. But when you really talk about those guys like Matthew, like Cooper, like Rob Havenstein, like Tyler Higbee, you know, 3 of those 4 guys I've been with for 8 years, and they've been incredibly important to us in a handful of ways. And then obviously this was the 4th year with Matthew. But those guys being those veteran leaders and modeling the way and what they've meant day in and day out, it's been really cool. And Rob was awesome this year, Jordan. It was fun to see. And I think when you put so much into something, that's why it takes so much out of you. When you come up a little bit shorter, when the journey ends a little bit sooner than what you want. But I know this about Rob, and I know this about myself and everybody else that we're talking about. They'll put themselves out there all over again, because even though it's hard and these feelings kind of suck, it's all worth it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll finish quickly with Wyatt and Stu.
Hi, Sean. As you look back at this first year without Aaron Donald, what was different about the way that you and some of the position coaches approached coaching this young defensive line?
Yeah, it's a good question, Wyatt. I think the first thing I would say is, you know, you have a system that you've run, and obviously we hired Chris to be the defensive coordinator and put whatever vision he thought was best in place. And as we were working to kind of figure that out, you think you know what it's going to be like without Aaron Donald. And then when it actually comes to fruition, you're saying, damn, this is a lot different. And meaning like this guy is even better than I thought. You thought you valued him, but he's even better. And you realize a lot of schemes that are activated that you didn't even have to deal with before, that just people said, I'm not doing this, versus Aaron Donald. And you're like, oh man, we got to defend a lot more. But I thought the coolest thing that the defensive staff did was an evolution of understanding that and really adjusting and adapting to our players, to those guys that were playing on the interior parts of the D-line and the outside linebacker, and then how that affected all 3 levels of the defense. And I think you guys saw it evolve. I thought we became a more aggressive outfit. We had some more versatility. We weren't playing some of the similar front and run structures that maybe you guys had seen us do it in previous years. But Aaron, it will go down as arguably the greatest defensive player to ever live. But I think what's really cool is our unit continued to grow together. And what was really fun was seeing how happy he was to watch it all unfold. And you see the excitement when he's at the Minnesota game and keeping in touch with him throughout the year. But I think Chris Shula, I think Giff Smith, AC Carter, Joe Canigio, those guys deserve a ton of credit for the evolution of it. But I think it was ongoing, and I think it's going to be evolving and adapting as we navigate how we want to be able to, be as good as we can going into next year. And if you said, hey, at the beginning of the year, this is what I thought we'd end up being, I don't think you know. I think you have to be totally and completely present. And I thought the flexibility and the ability to utilize all of our players was on display, and it was a real credit to Chris and his staff. And then ultimately, it's all about the players bringing it to life, and those guys did a great job. And, it was a fun group to root for. I think everybody felt that way.
And how did you see AC Carter and Giff Smith specifically, kind of grow as coaches throughout the year with that unit?
Yeah, Giff's a great coach. I've known Giff, since he was recruiting me when he was trying to recruit me to go to Tulane. So I've known Giff for a long time, and the energy that he has, the consistency, the passion, the ability to really connect with those guys, be demanding but never demeaning on them, because they know that he loves and cares about them. It's a really cool thing, and I thought they got a lot better. And AC's the same way. Watching his evolution as a coach and continued maturation, there's a possibility that we'll lose AC because he might get a better opportunity to go somewhere, and that'll be a big loss. But I know he should be really proud of the body of work and the positive influence that he's made on a lot of those guys on that front. And those 2 did a great job. And I think it's a really cool reflection of Giff's leadership to continue to empower AC to grow and have some of the opportunities to be in front of the room or run individual drills like what was reflected last year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stu.
Hey, Sean, within your first answer, when you were first asked about Cooper and when you were talking about the offense, I know it's early in the offseason and things like that, but just generally speaking, do you kind of have a preliminary idea of how different you want that vision to be this year compared to last year, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, Stu, would be just a little bit more versatility. We had a lot. The easy answer is to complain about the injuries that we had that threw off the continuity. And while that might be true, you can't allow that to inhibit us the way that it did, and that's nobody's responsibility but my own. I think more fully functional. I think even our teaching progressions for the totality of the group. How do you utilize the offseason? How are you making yourself more versatile from a personnel perspective, from just a run variety perspective? And those are the things that I'm excited to be able to dive into. But, I was talking to Liam Cohen the other day, and one of the coolest things that I think is reflected about what a great job he did was, you've got a background, and then when you watch them and what they evolved to with Bucky Irving and the way they ran the football and some of the variety and personnel groupings, I thought that was a cool reflection of, hey, maybe we think we're going to do that. And then what you evolved into, if you're able to understand, hey, the best coaches adjust to their players. And that's what we've got to do a good job of as it moves forward and what it looks like from our offensive line, from the surrounding parts with our backs. But I think, I could go on and on about the variety of things that I'm excited about attacking to hopefully avoid some of the pitfalls that we had throughout the year to ultimately lead to more consistent production and play, regardless of whatever our injury situation is.
And then lastly, with Braden and Jared both being named Defensive Rookie of the Year finalists, obviously they're already recognized by the PFWA for that award. But, what can you say about just what their on-field performances meant, but also just what they meant as far as the physical and mental toughness you've talked about as far as trying to get that from this particular draft class?
Yeah. Congratulations to those guys. Well-deserved. And also Jordan Whittington getting recognized as a kick returner. That's a really fun rookie class. I think the first thing that stood out about those guys, Stu, when you watch the film, the toughness, the edge, the competitive stamina that both of those guys had. And then you dive into their background and you hear about how they worked, how they loved the process, how they positively poured into one another. And that was illustrated immediately when they came in. And I think that's why you didn't see those guys hit the rookie wall. They got better as the season went on, and they're grown men. I think you hear me throw that term around, but that's what we're looking for. We're looking for men. And they were that. They're going to be really vital pieces for us moving forward. They just kind of have a look in their eye that when you challenge them, they respond the right ways. And I'm really proud of those two guys. I'm proud of that rookie class as a whole. But Jared and Braden, they push one another in a good way. And when you look at what we needed to do to be able to get both of those guys with our first two picks, they sure delivered. And I think the best thing about it is neither one of those guys, I think they're proud, but they're not going to be content. They're going to continue to challenge themselves moving forward, and I'm going to be on them.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it.
Coach, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, guys.